There is a specific kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. You know the one. You have been around people all day, conversations happened, meals were shared, someone told a joke, and you laughed at the right moment. And then you get home, or you sit in your car in the parking lot before going inside, and something settles over you that is heavier than exhaustion. Not sadness exactly, more like absence. Like the day passed through you without leaving anything behind. You open your phone, you scroll, you put it down, you pick it up again. There is a word for what you are feeling, but most people who feel it will not use that word because the word carries an image. An old person in an empty house, a child on the outside of a playground fence, someone visibly, obviously alone, and that is not you. You have people. You have a life that, from the outside, looks full. The word is loneliness, and the reason it is so hard to name is that the version of it most people actually live inside looks nothing like the picture. Hiru Onoda was a Japanese soldier stationed in the Philippine jungle during the Second World War. When the war ended in 1945, Onoda did not know. No one told him. His commanding officer had ordered him to fight until instructed otherwise, and so he did. For 29 years, he lived alone in the jungle, sustained by mission, by purpose, by the belief that what he was doing still mattered. He was found in 1974, loyal, disciplined, unbroken. What strikes people about Onoda's story is not the dedication. It is the particular quality of his isolation. He was not suffering in the way we imagine suffering. He had a reason to get up in the morning. He had a role. What he did not have, what he had not had for nearly 3 decades, was anyone to share the meaning of it with. Anyone to say, I see what you are doing. I know why it matters. You are not invisible. He did not know he was lonely. He thought he was at war. Most of us are not so different. John Cacioppo spent the better part of 3 decades trying to understand what loneliness actually is. Not as a social phenomenon, not as a statistic, but as a biological event. What he found, working out of the University of Chicago, reframed the entire conversation. Loneliness, Cacioppo argued, is not an emotion. It is a signal. The same way physical pain alerts the body to tissue damage, loneliness alerts the brain to social disconnection, a condition that, for a species as interdependent as ours, represents a genuine threat to survival. The brain does not distinguish at a neurological level between the danger of being alone in a forest 10,000 years ago and the feeling of sitting in a crowded room where no one truly knows you. Both register as threat. Both trigger the same cascade. Cortisol rises, sleep degrades, the immune system shifts into a low-grade defensive posture. The body prepares for a danger it cannot locate. This is why chronic loneliness does not feel like sadness. It feels like vigilance, like something is wrong but you cannot name it. Like you are waiting for something bad to happen in a room where everything looks fine. Robert Weiss, whose work on the social provisions of relationships remains foundational, made a distinction that clarifies something most people feel but cannot articulate. He identified 2 fundamentally different forms of loneliness. The first is social loneliness, the absence of a network, of community, of belonging to something larger than yourself. The second is emotional loneliness, the absence of a single person who truly knows you, who holds the specific, irreplaceable knowledge of who you are. You can have hundreds of acquaintances and be destroyed by the second kind. You can be married, surrounded by family, embedded in a community, and still lie awake at 3 in the morning with the specific ache of feeling that no one in your life, if pressed, could describe what is actually going on inside you. Not because they don't care, because you never showed them, because at some point, without deciding to, you learned to present a version of yourself that was easier to be around, more manageable, less needy, less real. In 2018, the British government did something that had never been done before, facing data showing that 9 million people in the country frequently or always felt lonely, a number the researchers described not as a mental health statistic, but as a public health crisis. They appointed the world's first minister for loneliness. The decision drew some mockery at the time. It also drew attention to something that governments had been avoiding naming for decades: that the most medically dangerous thing about modern life is not what we eat, not how much we exercise, not even how much we drink. It is how disconnected we have become from each other. Julianne Holt-Lunstad, a psychologist at Brigham Young University, published a meta-analysis in 2015 that examined 148 studies involving more than 300,000 people across multiple countries and demographic groups. Her finding was not subtle. Loneliness and social isolation increase the risk of premature death by approximately 26%. To put that in terms the body understands, the health impact of chronic loneliness is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It is more dangerous than obesity. It is more dangerous than physical inactivity. This information exists. It has been published in peer-reviewed journals and reported in mainstream media and cited by public health officials. And yet most people reading this sentence will still feel, somewhere underneath the data, that loneliness is a personal failure rather than a physiological condition, that the solution is simply to try harder, to put yourself out there, to be less closed off, less difficult, less afraid. The research suggests the opposite problem. Cacioppo's later work, conducted with Louise Hawkley, identified a phenomenon he called hypervigilance, a cognitive shift that occurs in people who have experienced prolonged social disconnection. The lonely brain, primed for threat, begins to scan the social environment differently. It reads ambiguous signals, a delayed text response, a flat tone of voice, someone glancing away during conversation, as evidence of rejection. It interprets neutral behavior as hostile. It finds confirmation of its own isolation in interactions that a non-lonely person would experience as entirely unremarkable. The consequence is not just psychological discomfort, it is behavioral. The person experiencing hypervigilance withdraws slightly, becomes a little more guarded, gives a little less of themselves in social situations because giving and being met with nothing, or what the brain has coded as nothing, has become a source of pain rather than connection, which causes the people around them to sense a distance, to stop reaching as often, to assume the person prefers their space, which confirms everything the lonely brain already believed. Loneliness does not just persist. It engineers its own continuation. It rewires the mechanism designed to escape it. Think about the last time someone asked you how you were doing, not in passing, genuinely with enough time and stillness that a real answer was possible. And think about what you said. Fine. busy, tired but okay, getting through it. Now think about what was actually true. There is a gap between those two things that most people have stopped noticing. The gap has been there so long, it feels like honesty. The performance of being manageable has become so practiced that it no longer feels like performance. It feels like personality. Viktor Frankl, who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps and spent the rest of his life studying what allows human beings to endure suffering, identified what he called the existential vacuum, a state of inner emptiness that he argued was becoming the defining psychological condition of modern life. Not depression exactly, not anxiety. A specific hollowness that arrives when a person's life lacks meaning, or more precisely, when there is no one to share the meaning with. Frankl's insight was that meaning is not a solo project. It is relational. We do not discover what matters to us in isolation. We discover it in the presence of others, in being witnessed, in being understood, in having someone reflect back to us a version of ourselves that feels true. When that witness is absent, something in the process of meaning-making stalls. The lights do not go out all at once, they just slowly, imperceptibly begin to dim. This is what makes the modern version of loneliness so difficult to locate. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive as absence. It arrives as a gradual replacement of depth with frequency, of intimacy with availability, of being known with being liked. We have more ways to reach each other than at any point in human history. We have fewer places where being reached actually means anything. The British Commission on Loneliness noted something in its findings that the statistics could not fully capture. That many of the loneliest people they interviewed were not people without social lives. They were people whose social lives had become, over time, entirely performative, who had learned, through years of small discouragements and social miscalibrations, that the version of themselves that was welcome in the world was not quite the real one, that the real one was safer kept inside. And here is where this stops being about other people. Because most of us, if we are honest with ourselves in the particular way that 3 in the morning sometimes forces, know exactly what it feels like to be in a room and not quite be there, to laugh and mean it, and still feel underneath the laugh that something essential is not being touched, to be loved genuinely by people who do not know the parts of you that most need to be loved. We tell ourselves this is privacy, maturity, not burdening others, the reasonable management of a self that is too complicated to share in full. But Cacioppo's data suggests a different reading. The withdrawal is not wisdom. It is the hypervigilant brain protecting itself from a pain it has learned to anticipate. The not showing up fully is not self-sufficiency. It is the scar tissue of 100 moments when showing up fully led nowhere. We did not choose to become hard to reach. We were trained into it. By disappointments small enough to be forgotten individually but large enough, accumulated, to change the architecture of how we move through the world. The question is not whether you are lonely. The question is how long you have been answering that question with the wrong word. Onoda came out of the jungle in 1974 and was welcomed home as a hero. He adapted, eventually, built a life. By most accounts, he was not a broken man. But there is a detail in his story that people rarely mention. When he was finally told that the war was over, when his former commanding officer flew to the Philippines to personally relieve him of his mission. His first response was not relief. It was disorientation. He had organized his entire existence around a reality that had stopped being true decades earlier. And the hardest part was not accepting that the war was over. The hardest part was figuring out who he was when the mission was gone. Perhaps the most honest thing that can be said about loneliness, the modern, invisible, crowded kind, is that we have been at war with our own need for connection for so long that we have forgotten it is a need at all. We have built elaborate systems of productivity and distraction and curated presence. We have learned to mistake the performance of connection for the thing itself. And somewhere in the middle of a conversation we are half present for, or a scroll through evidence of other people's fullness, or a silence in a room with someone we are supposed to be close to. Something very quiet tries to tell us, not that we are alone, that we have been alone for a while now, and that we have gotten very, very good at not noticing. The question is not how to find people. You are surrounded by people. The question is what it would take, what it would actually cost, to let one of them see you, and whether after all this time you still remember how.